adjusted exponential smoothing. Is an exponential smoothing with a trend adjustment factor added. So here we are basically trying to add a trend. We are trying to add a trend. A trend factor is added to the exponential smoothing. So once you add a trend to it, we call it the adjusted exponential smoothing. Now that is giving us AF, adjusted forecast. So AF. So AFT plus 1, that's the forecast for the next period, is giving us FT plus 1. So the adjusted forecast for a period is giving us the forecast in that period. So already we would have calculated our forecast. We already know the forecast of the various periods, plus the trend, or the trend factor in that period. So FT, the TT there, is basically known as the exponentially smoothed trend factor, exponentially smoothed trend factor. And then the TT plus 1, that's the smoothed trend factor for the next period, is giving us beta into bracket FT plus 1 minus FT plus 1 minus beta into bracket TT. That's the exponentially smoothed trend factor there. Now remember, the TT you see here is the last or the previous period trend factor. The beta there is the smoothing constant for the trend, and usually it's between 0 and then 1. It's usually between 0 and then 1. Please put down the formula and let's continue. Please put this formula, the formulas down. You need this formula, and then you also need this formula. Now, for you to be able to find the adjusted smoothing factor, first of all, you should know the trend, the smoother trend factor for that period. Already we've calculated the forecast for the period. We already know this period. It's just the trends we don't know. So we are trying to calculate the trend factor. So first of all, we need to know the trend factor, and then we can then substitute it to get our adjusted factors. So please put down this formula. And then the formula for the trend, put that formula down as well. Now let's check from the same example. We're being told that our alpha is 50%, and then our beta is 30%. So our alpha is 50%, and then our beta is 30%. Now they are telling us to start with T2 is equal to 0.00. They're asking us to start with T2 is equal to 0.00. So for us to be able to find the adjusted factor in period 3, all we need to do is first of all find the trend in period 3. The trend in period 3. Now remember, the trend in period 3 will be giving us the beta into bracket, the forecasted value in period 3 minus the forecasted value in the previous year plus 1 minus the beta T2. And they've already told us that T2 here is 0. T2 here is 0. So let's substitute that. You realize that it will be 0.3 into bracket F3. Now, when you look at F3, look at the value of F3 under 50%. They say we should use 50%. So the forecasted value for the 50%, F3 was 38.50. And then the F2 there was 37. So this is F3, and then this is F2. Forecasted period using the 50% smoothing factor. The forecast for the third period was 38.50. And then for the previous month, which is F2, it was 37. So you realize that it is 38.5 minus 37.0 plus 0.7, because it told us 1 minus beta, and our beta is 30%. So that is 1 minus 30%, that is 70%, multiplied by T2. And our T2 here is 0. So multiplied by 0, and that gives us 0.45. So if we now want to find our adjusted forecast for that period, is giving us F3 plus T3. The F3 was the already calculated forecast for period 3. That is giving us 38.5. So the 38.5 plus our 0.45, that gives us 38.95. 38.95. That gives us 38.95. Now let's assume we want to find that for period 4. We want to find that for period 4. So if you want to find that for period 4, what it means is that we need to find T4. We need to first of all find T4. And you realize that our T4 would also be giving us 0.3 multiplied by, let's go back to our preamble. Once we go to our preamble, we'll be able to tell what the forecast for F4 will be. Let's go back to our preamble. Look at the forecast for period 4, which is T4. You realize that it was 39.75. So this is our F4. And then this becomes now our F3. So from these two values, we will now be able to predict that. So 0.3 into bracket 39.75 minus 38 minus 38.50 plus 0.7. Remember this time it will be 0.30. It will be 0.7 multiplied by T3, the previous trend factor. But our T3 here, we just calculated it to be 0.45. So we multiply this by 0.45. You multiply this by 0.45. And when you do that, you realize that the value you get will be the 0.69. So this was what we did to be able to get this value of 0.69. That was what we did to be able to get this 0.69. That was what we did to be able to get this 0.6 now. Now, if you want to also get this your 40 plus the 40.44, all you do is that you add your 0.69 to your forecast, which is the 39.75, and that will give us the 40.44. So that is basically what we did to get all our adjusted values, you see here. So first of all, we need to find the trends. Now you realize that the preamble told us that the trend for T2, was 0. Now the reason why they told us that the trend for T2 was 0 is that this was how they arrived at the trend for T2 to be equal to 0. You realize that under T2, if you are trying to find the T2, it will be 0.3 into bracket D1. So that is 37 minus 37.0 plus 0.7 multiplied by T1. But you realize that here there's nothing like T1 because we will not be able to get the previous data. So the dash there means it's just 0. So it's 0. We don't know it. So once you multiply 0.3 by 0 and then 0.7 by 0, you realize that your T2 automatically becomes 0.00. That was how come we had 0.00 to be the trend for T2. Then we added a 0.00 to the 37 here to get our first adjusted, which is the 37. That was how we did it. That was how it was done to get the T2 to be 0.00. So all the time to find your adjusted forecast, you need to first of all come up with your trend, because we said the exponential adjusted smoothing factor is arrived by adding a trend to it. So first of all, you need to calculate your trends. Once you know your trends, you just add your trends to the forecasted values and it gives you the adjusted. Once you know your trend, you add it to it and it gives you the adjusted. Any question? If you have any question, you can now ask your questions. If you have any question, you can now ask. Yeah, Nanaya.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Please, when you were trying to calculate the first one, that was 39.75 minus 38.5. You multiply by zero point 0.3, then that one you have 3.75. Then you multiply the other one. You add it. When I didn't get the answer that you had. So I don't know whether I couldn't see you all the things that you put there.
And so when you multiply 0.3 into bracket 39.75 minus 38.5.
Yeah, you get 0.35 that side.
So and then you also go and multiply
Multiply
0.7
0.7. Yeah.
by 0.45.
Yeah, by 0.45. That one you have point one something. So point 0.7 multiply 0.45. I had a 0.315.
So add
So
0.315.
when you add to 0.375. Oh, okay. Thank
So you
you.
see, you were not doing the calculations well.
I think the second one, because the second one I didn't get the figure I had now. So thank you.
You're welcome. So that is how you work it. That's how you work for all the trends. That's how you work for all the trends. But this, you don't calculate the forecast again because we had already calculated the forecasted values already. So these values are the forecasted values at the 50% smoothing factor. Then we add it to the trends here to get our adjusted factors. Who else is having a concern? Who else has issues? Rashida to Suleiman Abubakar.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Lisa, please, I want you to go back